So I want to highlight a solution to a problem that happens all the time in Express web servers, and specifically when you have an Express web server, you have all these routes and you have what are called middleware. And remember, middleware is a fancy term for just a function that happens between the request response lifecycle. And so it's a series of functions, call it, however many functions, 5, 10, 15, 20 functions. So a request comes in. If I'm kind of looking at this source code I have pulled up, every new request into this server boots up an Express server. It's a small, very lightweight Express server. We kind of accept certain kinds of input from the front end. We do these different things. And anytime you have an app.use, app.use is registering application-wide middleware. So it's making things available to the entire application request response lifecycle. And so what happens here is that the order matters of your middleware calls. And so what I've heard, and is very true, is oftentimes in JavaScript, like you can put a function definition below a function call. And the order doesn't matter because that's what's referred to oftentimes as hoisting. The runtime environment in the browser hoists that function up so that it can actually understand what that function is and then call it. And so the order doesn't matter when you're working oftentimes in the browser, in that, the what's on top of one another. But here, a problem that's happening is we have some middleware in this class that we've started to use.
Do you mind sharing the screen?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not even sharing? Oh. Cool. Now I'm sharing my screen. If you think about this, we have some different middlewares. App.use is a middleware. And what this does is it defines all of our routes, all of our back-end routes for our Express server. We have routes for users and we have routes for bugs. And if I were to go into the source code for my routes for my users, we got a whole bunch of code here, but the important part is, hey, in order to get access to my database, I want to make sure that the user is logged in. Okay, now in order for this is_logged_in function to work, this is a function that kind of comes out of this dependency that we've brought in, called middleware auth. Okay, so to kind of back up, right here, we're registering middleware to make a variable called rec.auth. And so as I dived through this the other day, but somewhere in here we make a rec.auth. See right here, this middleware creates this rec.auth variable. Now, is_logged_in checks to see if that variable exists. Okay, so the middleware creates a variable and then this function checks to see if that exists. Back to the order that matters. Here are where we're defining our routes. But here is where the variable is created. Right? This function right here creates rec.auth. And so if you view this as like order of operations, you have to create the variable first before you try and use that variable on your routes. Okay, and the order here matters. And so I've seen this problem 2 or 3 times now, and the problem looks something like this. Mr. G, I'm logging in, I'm creating an auth cookie, but yet I still can't get access to my routes because that rec.auth is undefined. Well, the reason it was undefined is because the order of operations matter. We have to create the variable first. The variable's created with these lines right here. And now rec.auth is available to our routes. Problem solved.
I know, like when we would do our routes, like in user and bugs and stuff like that. I remember you were saying like that you should list the static I just didn't. I wasn't too sure about this one, like an actual. Server.
Yeah, so this, you're right. So that's another place where order matters,
Yeah,
right?
I just now figured that out.
That's absolutely another.
I'm going for the
Static routes before, or dynamic routes before the static routes in the order top to bottom. Yep. So that's another place where the order matters. You're right about that. But this is, a similar story in the order of the middleware function calls. Because again, middleware, you can modify that the request object that comes from the client. So cool. Hope you found that useful.